Hey, Rabbi, see you're in the Big Apple visiting,
Yes, I'm here, Joe.
and not alone, it seems.
There's always some activity in New York.
Well, speaking of activity, I was approaching the Beltway today. Oh, it wasn't that bad. And the trucker protest was going on. And we were driving over a bridge over the Beltway. There were a number of people with flags and banners cheering on the truckers. And the truckers were honking their horns. And someone who will remain nameless, except they were sitting in the seat next to me, said, "What idiots?" And I go, "They're not idiots. They're just people who are passionate about their point of view. Not that point of view, but another point of view similar. And we have to understand that they see their life and this situation as unfair."
Mhm.
What do you think about that? Do you agree with King Kong and Godzilla?
They're just annoyed. Yeah, I was driving on the outer loop, and when I crossed the Legion Bridge on the outer loop, was pretty close to the beginning because they were coming down 270. So a lot of us just slowed down, not pacing them because we're going the opposite direction, but watching them. And then as we got over the Legion Bridge and started to spread out, we went back to going 100 miles an hour like we do on the Beltway. But to watch them, everyone slowed down a little. And I've heard this before, calling people stupid. And I think it's time to make a stand or talk about it from a Jewish perspective because it's not true. You know, we all know people whose actions seem not to be logical. Now, to the individual, it may be, or to them, it might be illogical. You look back on our own lives, Joe, there were many things we did that were illogical. In fact, I don't even remember my sophomore year in college. And I often wonder what happened that year. But until my DeLorean gets out of the garage, I'll never know about my sophomore year in college. So we label these non-logical or illogical people as stupid. So I want to pull that out and not label people. Let's take a look at the Talmud. The Talmud has a statement with an A and a B part. The A part says, a person is always responsible. Plain and simple, there's no excuse. You can't blame your genes. You can't blame eating Twinkies. You can't blame your parents. You can't blame your environment. The Talmud, the rabbis made it very clear, each of us is responsible for our behavior. Now the B part. Anytime a person misses the mark, acts in an illogical fashion, it is because there entered into them a spirit of stupidity. What a great insight of human beings. They're not labeling people as stupid. They're the spirit of stupidity. And what happens, the rabbis explain, is we don't consider the consequences of our own behavior. We just act, react, because the spirit of stupidity has entered us. And that's it. At times, we act stupid.
And so we should be understanding of other people who are acting stupid, even if it's just in our opinion.
Exactly. We want to have compassion because we're all created in God's image. Our souls came pure from God. And that being the case, we can't do anything wrong. We can't commit any kinds of original sin or acts of act. No. It's not built into us because our souls are pure. They're from God. We're in God's image. So we have to explain what's going on. And the answer is, what were they thinking? What they're doing was an act of stupidity. And what we want to do is, what is the outcome of the act? And is it consistent with the person? Are they harming themselves or others? So we do have a way of determining that the act was, yeah, stupido. I did something stupid. It was crazy. You know, we often hear the insanity plea, and I want my listeners to remember insanity is a legal term. It's not a psychiatric term. And sometimes we make the mistake of thinking insanity is psychiatric. It isn't. It's legal. In psychiatry, we say someone's crazy. That's the psychiatric term, crazy. The legal term is insanity. Well, in Judaism, instead of saying not guilty by reason of insanity, we would say not guilty by reason of stupidity. It entered into you. And rather than analyzing, rather than stopping for a moment and seeing what will be the outcome of my choice, we just react. And stupido. It's also
Isn't it?
Yeah, go ahead.
Isn't it also possible that by saying someone else is just an idiot for what they're doing, that we're closing ourselves to the possibility that they might be right?
Not just might be right, there might be some truth. There might be something in their statements that we want to think about. And that goes back, Joe, to my old statement, everyone wants to kill the piano player. You know, I just play the music. I didn't write it. If you don't like the music, don't kill me. I'm just bringing the message. And by calling people stupid, that's a way of doing that. It cuts off any discussion, any analysis of what they might be saying. And if we stop and say, wait a minute, the spirit of stupidity entered that person. Now, let's put the act aside and let's talk about why they gave into it, why they made that choice. Because remember, we're all responsible. So we're not going to fall back on, I want my listeners to know I have been diagnosed with OPD. So you can't really blame me. I have obnoxious personality disorder. So you can never blame me for anything I do. I have OPD. But the Talmud's very plain saying, no, if you have that diagnosis, you know that's your behavior, you now have to make choices. You don't have to act on it. And that's very important because too often we're looking for something so we don't have to be responsible for our actions. And no, that's not what we're talking about. All of us are responsible, even though we may have a medical condition or, like myself, a psychiatric condition. And sometimes it's OPS, obnoxious personality syndrome, but they're very similar and it's hard to tease them out. And we all laugh at that because you say that's ridiculous. Exactly, that's why I use it. Because we're not going to fall back on, we're diagnosed, we know. Now I have to think about my actions. Because, Joe, there's going to be times in our life, there's going to be a moment that we're going to have to say no so we don't fall into temptation. There's going to be that moment. Maybe it has to do with money. Maybe it has to do with something sexual. Maybe it has to do with a pyramid scheme. There's lots of things out there that would tempt us. And if we don't stop for a moment and say, no, wait a minute, I'm not going to fall. This is by reason of stupidity. This is one of those times. And I'm responsible for my actions. So I'm going to not fall into them, even though it's tempting.
Well, one thing that I'm always willing to fall for, despite the resident kaiju giving us a hard time in the background, is your wisdom every week, Rabbi. So thank you again, once again. Kong, what do you say?
Kong is quoting one of the great immortal teachers of Judaism, the late John Wayne, who said, life's hard. It's even harder if you're stupid.